In this video, we will discuss the pleading requirements of the PSLRA. PSLRA stands for the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act. In the 1990s, high-tech firms, accounting firms, and other defendants argued to Congress that there were too many meritless securities fraud lawsuits. Congress responded by passing the PSLRA, which imposes stricter civil litigation pleading requirements than either Rule 8 or Rule 9 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. The PSLRA makes it much harder for plaintiffs to start a federal securities fraud lawsuit. For example, let's say an executive from a public company says, "Our profits are increasing." Investors are happy with the news, and the public company's stock gains value. It turns out that these claims are untrue, and, in fact, the public company's profits are decreasing. Investors are angry because the value of their stock decreases. Investors decide to sue, and in their complaint, they allege securities fraud. To plead securities fraud, the complaint must satisfy the PSLRA. The PSLRA imposes two major requirements. First, the complaint must specify every misleading statement made by the defendant and why each statement was misleading. In our case, the complaint would have to specify that the statement, "Our profits are increasing," was false, and that it was false because the profits were actually decreasing. In addition, the PSLRA requires plaintiffs to explain why they believe the statements were false. In our example, why do the plaintiffs believe that the profits were actually decreasing? A second major requirement of the PSLRA is that the allegations of the complaint must raise a strong inference that the defendant acted with scienter. Scienter means that a defendant intentionally or recklessly engaged in wrongdoing. The PSLRA requires that the complaint create a strong inference of scienter. To determine whether the complaint creates a strong inference of scienter, the court should look at the complaint as a whole and compare culpable inferences against non-culpable inferences. For example, documents showing that the defendant knowingly lied create an inference of scienter. If the complaint alleges that on May 2nd, the defendant received an email saying, "Profits are decreasing," but then on May 3rd, the defendant said, "Profits are increasing," this would create an inference that the defendant acted with scienter. The court must also consider non-culpable inferences. For example, if the complaint does not allege that the defendant profited from the false statement, we can reasonably infer that the defendant did not intentionally make the false statement. In our example, if the complaint does not allege that the defendant had any reason to lie, we can reasonably infer that the defendant simply made a mistake. The court must weigh culpable inferences against non-culpable inferences to see if the complaint raises a strong inference of scienter. A strong inference of scienter means that culpable inferences are as strong or stronger than the non-culpable inferences that can be made from the complaint. If the complaint does not meet the PSLRA's strict pleading requirements, then the court will dismiss the complaint. For example, if the court determines that the complaint only raises a weak inference of scienter, not a strong inference of scienter, then the court will dismiss the case. If you'd like to discuss pleading requirements or any other matter related to U.S. law, stop by the message board, and please visit my blog and feel free to send me an email or to submit your comments below.